Hey students, how you doing? This is week 2 of our civil rights study, and this week we're going to be looking at the civil rights movement proper. It starts in 1954 with another Supreme Court decision, which is Brown versus Board of Education. In that Supreme Court decision, the Supreme Court overturned the Plessy versus Ferguson decision that happened in 1896. You'll remember, because you're great students and you studied really hard this week, that in 1896 the Supreme Court was asked to decide whether the state of Louisiana could tell black people and white people that they couldn't sit together on trains. And the Supreme Court said that states can do that they can separate people as long as they keep things equal. If the black school and the white school is the same, it's equal, no problem. If the white drinking fountain and the black drinking fountain is the same, no problem. If the white section and the black section is the same, no problem. The problem is they weren't the same. Nobody checked, nobody investigated, nobody looked into it. And so from the end of Reconstruction, right, the end of the Civil War, which was really that election in 1876, where the Democrats and Republicans tied, and they made this horrible deal. And the Northerners, the Republicans, agreed to pull the armies of the North out of the South. And that gave the Southerners the chance they wanted to reestablish that social order that they had built over 400 years of slavery. And once that war ended, and once the armies were pulled out by the North, and the Southerners began to build these Jim Crow structures, these segregation laws began to get established in the South, it just got worse and worse and worse. But then, in 1954, the Supreme Court was asked to decide whether or not a school in Kansas could make a little black girl walk clear across town to go to school at the black school when there was a white elementary school right across the street from where she lived. And the Supreme Court decided that separate is inherently unequal. You can't separate black and white people without doing psychological damage. That when you separate black and white people, that is inherently unequal. There's nothing equal about it. No more separate but equal. The foundation upon which the Jim Crow system was built was destroyed by the Supreme Court case in 1954. But here's the problem. None of the southern states had changed anything. By 1957, 3 years later, not a single southern state had integrated their schools. Basically, the states had said, you know what, I don't care what the Supreme Court says. We're not going to change. We like our segregation. We're keeping our segregation. Or, as one of the governors in the South said, segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. And so what had to happen was people like you, people like me, had to decide that you were no longer going to participate in the Jim Crow system. And that means you would have to break Southern laws. You would have to sit in the white section on the bus. You would have to refuse to stand up for a white customer on a bus. You would have to go sit in the white lunch counters. You would have to start violating segregation laws in the South because it's your right. The Supreme Court has said so in Brown versus Board of Education. If you're a black man or woman, you don't have to follow segregation laws. Segregation laws are unconstitutional. So are you going to take your rights back? But here's the thing. If you break the law, if you sit in the white section of the lunch counter, the local law enforcement will arrest you. They'll prosecute you. They'll take you to trial. You'll be found guilty. And then you'll have to appeal to the Supreme Court. And they'll find you innocent. But that could take months. That could take years. And so who had the guts? Who had the fortitude? Who had the courage? Who was willing to pay the price to break Southern laws, to get punched in the face by angry white people, to get arrested and have your name destroyed, to have your businesses shut down because you couldn't work because you were in jail? Who was willing to get fire hosed by the fire department when you were a part of a peaceful protest and these very angry and racist fire chiefs decided they were going to teach you a lesson? They were going to roll you down the street like a tumbleweed using a fire hose. Who was willing to pay that price? Those are the people of the civil rights movement. They didn't have any money. They didn't have any guns. They didn't have any political power. And these people defeated Jim Crow. These are the people who won the last battle of the Civil War. And they did it without firing a shot. Take a look at this picture. The Civil Rights Movement is 1954 to 1968. And what it basically is there was a powerful decision made by the strong arm of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court decided in Brown versus Board of Education that they were going to smash the foundation upon which the Jim Crow system was built. And what was that foundation? That foundation, as you'll recall from last week, was Plessy versus Ferguson. The decision in 1896 that said as long as they're equal, you can separate them. But in 1954, the Supreme Court said no. Separate is inherently unequal. And so in this decision, in 1954, the Supreme Court smashed the foundations upon which the Jim Crow prison was built. Now the question was, if the foundation is broken, how do you get the house to fall? Well, you know the answer. If you have a building like this classroom I'm in, and the foundation's all broken and crooked, is the building just going to fall down by itself? No. You got to push it. You got to give it a push. You got to swing through with a wrecking ball, and it is going to fall like a knife through butter, but you've got to hit the building. And the problem is the wrecking ball in this particular situation, the wrecking ball is made of lives. These are individual citizens like you who are deciding to break the laws. And every law they break, they get arrested for. And then they get put in jail. And then they go to court. And then they go to the Supreme Court. And then they win. And now that law is gone. And the next law is gone. And they break another law. And the Supreme Court finds that law unconstitutional. And it's almost like a weed whacker where all these weeds have grown up. And every time they break one of these Southern segregation laws, another one of those laws gets chopped down by the Supreme Court. But you've got to be willing to pay the price. And that's why the Civil Rights Movement is represented by this wrecking ball. They're swinging through the South, breaking these laws one at a time. And they go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court keeps finding in their favor. So this is a great story. There's a lot of stories about marches, sit-ins, freedom riders. This week you're going to watch an amazing documentary called Eye on the Prize. This documentary is one of the best documentaries ever made because it actually interviews the people who were in the civil rights movement after they had won. Eye on the Prize is a fantastic documentary because it's made with the people who were actually there doing the work, fighting the civil rights movement. These men and women who were in the battle are being interviewed in the documentary. It's not some expert historian talking about people who have died a long time ago. You watch actual footage of them marching, of them being beaten, arrested, of them singing and protesting in their teens and their 20s. And then they interview those same people in the 30s and 40s, and those people tell you why they did what they did and what it meant. This documentary is unique in that way because you have both footage of the event itself and then commentary and explanation by the people who did it. It's tremendous. I think you're going to really enjoy it. And I think it's going to encourage you because this is one of the great stories in American history. Remember, these people, they did not have any money. They didn't have any power. They didn't have any weapons, right? These people, they basically were able to tear down the Jim Crow system through their love, their persistence, and their appeal to justice. It's a great story of how society can change peacefully, how you can go from a prison like this to freedom like this. And today we need to hear these stories because all around our country, we're losing liberties today. Our governor has told our citizens that they don't have the right to protest in our capital, even though the First Amendment says that Congress shall make no law prohibiting the people to peaceably assemble and petition their government for a redress of grievance. Our constitutional rights guarantee us the freedom to petition our state government whenever we want. And yet Gavin Newsom has said you can't protest because of the coronavirus. Problem is he doesn't have that authority. And these people didn't have the authority to do what they did either. The reason why Jim Crow was built the way it was built is because citizens like you and citizens like me looked the other way. Presidents looked the other way. Congressmen looked the other way while this stripping of liberty was going on for almost 100 years. Liberty has to be defended generationally, one generation at a time. And I'm not saying that our government is the same as the Jim Crow governments of the South, but I am saying that in every generation, for good reasons or bad, our liberties, our freedoms are always under assault. And we have to be vigilant. We have to speak out. We have to exercise our rights to inherit our birthright, just like they did. So I hope that you enjoy this next week of study. I think you're really going to like this story. It's very encouraging. And next week, we're going to finish the story, and we're going to look at how it was that Jim Crow was ultimately defeated. And so I can't wait to talk to you about that. Until I see you next time, have a great week.